Cool. So, like, the first of these sessions is really what I want to become as a regular support for my clients, past, present, and future. And the idea of all of this is that we're going to draft up a huge content plan that will be based on the conversations primarily that I have with every single one of you in our monthly meetings. And they're the meetings that we can't really dive deep into topics that I want to get into like this tonight. And we're usually dealing with the reactive or the proactive planning for the business. And so these will allow me to look at other topics that we can focus on. So in this session, we're going to talk about obviously Q4 planning. Next one, we're going to do CRMs and what project management systems everybody's looking at. I'm actually going to make that a round table opportunity for people so that we can focus on, well, what's working for each of the agencies that we're working with at the minute. And then after that, I have a guy called Kieran Phelan who's going to join us. He's an accountant from Derry, Satori Accounting. He is one of the first zero accountants in NI, and he also works primarily with agencies. So the idea is that we're going to bring in some specialists, people who are introducing best practices into agency world, and then we can give that best practice to you guys as well. So hopefully we'll get some great insights from him. And if you guys have any topics that you want me to cover in coming weeks, please let me know. Drop me a note in the chat or drop me an email afterwards if you're watching this after the session. So let's get this going then. We're all here tonight, three of us, because we're here and we want to build our businesses. We're about 3/4 of the way through the year, and it's still work to be done now to hit our goals, to set ourselves up for a strong end to 2025 and to set us up for an even better 2026. And there's no one that I've spoken to over the last 6 months who is winging it in their business, but I would definitely say that every one of us would put their hands up and say that we could all do better. And tonight's not just about taking notes and then filing them away. It's about identifying what's holding us all back and what we can fix before Christmas and what we can put into action afterwards. So I have 4 parts that I'm going to cover tonight: where we are versus where we think we are, and there's usually a gap between those two. Our 3 Q4 non-negotiables and the costs and benefits that we must review, and what else must happen. What happens then if you act versus not acting? Well, we all know that nothing happens if you don't take action. And then the final thing we're going to do is look at that 79-day plan until the new year, because that's all it is actually. And that's how until Christmas actually. 79 days to make a difference. And I know you're all busy, but ultimately there's some work to be done still. Most agencies, owners that I would work with have a story to tell about their business. And you know these lines as much as anyone, because they're the lines that I say myself. You know, we're growing steadily, our pipeline's looking well, team's running well, and we just need a few more clients. These are the things that we will all say to ourselves every single month. And if somebody asks you, your friends ask you, your colleagues ask you, your clients ask you, things are always going well. We say those things ourselves because they're the stories that we tell ourselves. But if we're really, really honest with ourselves, are they true? I'm not sure they are. Because the truth is that behind the scenes, everything is still some sort of work in progress. And, you know, our revenue growth is lower than expected, significant team transition, which all happens. Our pipeline is a fraction of what's needed. If there is even a pipeline, we're still in client delivery for where we shouldn't be. And you need better clients, no more clients, and you don't have the time to implement change. We all need to be honest about where we are before we can plan where we're going. And I guarantee you that there's something in there that's resonating with a few of you, because I've been in that exact same situation myself, where none of those items in that list are as good as we want them to be. Turning these fairy tale stories into reality is tonight's goal. So the questions I wanted to ask yourselves: where are we really? Where are we with our revenue? Are we growing or just busy? Because busy doesn't pay the bills. Is a team running well or running without you? Because there's a massive difference in those two things. And the systems, are they built or are they just in our head? And if they're just in our head, they're not really systems. We just have a really expensive job that we've built for ourselves. And these aren't rhetorical questions, because these are what we actually need to focus on. These are the things that will open up all of the opportunities in our business and the things we need to address right now and in the future. And these are some real examples of what I would consider truths in our business, let's say. The reality of some businesses are that there's growth, And in this instance, where if I was marking this out, or if I was identifying, well, this opportunity in our business, would I say that that was meeting my goals? Yes, it's 25% revenue growth. Do we need to change anything in that function right this second? Probably not. Then, if we look at the profit margin, it's not meeting our goals that we would have set. And I would work this out for your business. I would literally model out a table and say, this is the 4 or 5 metrics that we're measuring on. Here's the reality. Does this meet our goals? And then, do we need to focus on change? And in this instance, then the profit margin is probably being reduced by scope creep or underpricing or inefficiency in our business. And then the next one is a bit of a personal one. How many hours did you work last month? And I know that a lot of people that we work with work very, very hard. 50-hour week isn't uncommon. 200-hour months, absolutely no issues. And if we did that and we're not meeting our goals, do we need to delegate? Do we need to, figure out the systems, put those in place, or reduce our hours and get some more freedom in our business? And then the pipeline. And this is the one that I talk about a lot with all of my clients, because nobody in my business, in any of the businesses that I work with, has this infinite pipeline. And the pipeline is always churning. The pipeline's always changing. And if your pipeline's sitting at £1,000, that's nothing in reality. And that's not a typo. And I've seen that in some businesses where they've no pipeline at all, £1,000 where it is. And that will definitely not meet our goals. So what do we need then? We need more sales. So in this example, right, this is what I want you to do. I'd like you to just take that away for yourself and figure out what those metrics look like for your business, what they look like for your studio, what they look like as an opportunity for growth, and then start to identify the truths, the reality, whether or not they meet goals, and what change you actually need to take, and what actions then become from that. And this is something I posted the other day, and it's probably the most important slide of the whole deck, because if somebody bought your business today, what would they change tomorrow? And you already know the answer to your problems. You just don't want to address them. And what would they start? What would they stop? Who would they keep? What would they keep? And who or what would they get rid of? Because I promise each one of you that there's something that they would change. And whatever that something is, that's what you should start working on tomorrow morning, because you don't need to wait for some imaginary buyer to tell you it's broken. You already know it's broken, and you've just decided not to actually take action on it. And going to get into the non-negotiables. So these are the non-negotiables that I have set for Q4 for a number of my clients. It's the most common non-negotiables, because while you will have specific challenges in your business, generally speaking, they fall into 3 different areas: pipeline, which we talked about there a second ago, systems, and then pricing. And as we go through each one, I want you to identify whether or not that's the biggest gap in your business, or that there's something else. So it doesn't have to be one of my 3, it can be your own one. But it's not which one sounds easiest to fix, it's the one that's actually holding your business back in 2025. And if it's something else, completely take it down and document it and take action. And we'll take a few minutes to create an action plan for this later on as well. So my non-negotiable number 1 is fixing your sales pipeline. What happens if we ignore this? Well, January will come around and we'll panic. It'll be the 2nd of January. Everybody's back from Christmas and you've got absolutely no work booked. So we panic, we are stressed, we'll take a discounted rate for anything, and we're scrambling for the work. If we get the wrong clients, well, then we're desperate and we'll take anybody who says yes. It doesn't matter if they're a good fit, doesn't matter if it's a profitable job, we just need the cash flow. And this feast or famine that then becomes is that we will never break this cycle. We're either too busy doing the work or too busy selling because we're not busy enough. And this same revenue, less profit, is another year stuck exactly where you are now at best, or you're going backwards. My question in all of these non-negotiables is a business question, but also a personal question. How would you feel personally if these problems weren't addressed? Well, you'd come back in January and you'd be stressed, you'd be anxious, you'd be worried about the future and unable to make good decisions, unable to reward yourself financially, and unable to move forward. And that's just you personally. And every one of us is in business to make some more money, to have more freedom, sometimes both. And without sales pipeline being that feeder of all this work in, we're never going to get there. But then on the other side, because this is a positive chat, what happens if we fix this? Well, you're confident in your pricing, so we can charge exactly what we're worth because we're not desperate. We're full to the brim. Better clients, well, we can be selective and we can say no to wrong fit clients. Anyone that displays a red flag, out the door. Predictable revenue, well, we can have a hiring plan. We know when we're going to scale, we know when we're going to grow. We can plan our investment and we can actually run the business strategically instead of being reactive. And then we have momentum. Wins breed more wins, and we can start 2026 ahead of the game instead of being behind it. Personally, again, what would this mean for you guys? Well, we can pay ourselves first and foremost what we feel we're worth. We can put money away for our future. We can take a dividend. We can book that family trip. And I know that many agency owners see profit as a measure of success, and that's normal because that's how we're all built. But in reality, we want this to be the best version possible. This list, then, what do we need to do to fix our pipeline? Well, this week I'd like you all to identify 20 ideal clients, audit your current pipeline value truthfully, cut out anything that's been there 6 months, it's never coming in, identify the gaps, look internally to, pardon me, to current customers who we can sell more to. By the end of this month, I want you to start your outreach to your dream clients. So who's next on our sales pitch? Who do we want to target for 2026 that will take that length of time to scale to? Who do we need to re-engage as dormant clients? You know, we all have those in our sales list or our client list. And if we were to set up our Q1 sales process now, how good would it be coming back in January and knowing that all that activity has happened and all that work is out there? And then by the end of November, well, I put in an arbitrary figure of 3x your Q1 revenue target. Ultimately, this needs to just be as high as possible. If you know your win rate, it's very easy to understand how much you need for Q1. But if you don't, we can work on that in our next session and figure that out. I would like some of you to have projects already agreed by the end of November for January, because if we can do that, we know we're going in with this level playing field, with this opportunity to scale in 2026. So what do they look like for you? Where is it better to focus your efforts? I always think that it's easier to focus internally first on those clients that already have spent money with us, and then focus on those clients that are external, those dream clients, or those clients that we want to grow into for 2026. But really, the choice is yours, and what you have to consider what the options are for you both. Non-negotiable number is systems. Here's again what happens normally. You get busy, you hire somebody to help, you're busier again, and you're managing people, but still in delivery. We've all been there. We're all doing the job that we're not meant to be doing anymore. We're not allowed to work in the business, on the business, because we're working in the business. And this is a trap that every single business owner falls into. And we think that hiring is the answer. But again, that's just throwing more and more money at the exact same problem. And if we don't scale without systems, there's going to be complete chaos. We'll lose our clients because nothing's consistent. You know, there's even communication, our systems and processes are not in place. You and I are still in delivery because we're working in the business and not on it. And we're the most expensive project managers on the face of the earth. Our team start to burn out massively because they're constantly in this whole chaotic business. There's high turnover, constant training, and you're always starting from scratch. Whereas if we had a system for onboarding, that would be fantastic. And the outcome of all of this is that our margins completely erode, they disappear. So more bodies, less control, less profit. We're turning over more, but making less. And that just sounds like a recipe for disaster. And there's nobody that I have worked with in any agency who has this all figured out 100% of the time, because it's a moving target and it must always remain a priority because of that. Again, being really positive in the whole thing, though, because that's what we're here for, is that what happens if we figure this out? Well, we've got scale, more profit, more freedom. The business will grow without you, the bottleneck. And I think that I had the advantage in our agency because I was never in service delivery. I was never a designer, never in the production side of the business. For me, it was just really simple for me to just put the right people in the right place. But as an agency owner who's a designer or a developer or the lead coach or the lead, you know, the person who runs the business, is your focus needs to be on removing yourself from that business and buying back time. Because when you do that, you've got capacity both for your personal life and for your business life. And if we do that and we do it right, well, we will have better margins and efficiency, and we can use the leverage of our team to make more profit. I posted earlier on LinkedIn, I'm not sure if any of you saw it, so I'll just reiterate it again. Your agency structure, your business structure should serve your business objectives, is what I said. So why do many business owners, agency owners, treat their role as an employee and not the business owner that they are? And I think that's pretty common across all of the people that I work with over time. We all see ourselves as service delivery rather than MD, and it has to be retrained out of us. And the third non-negotiable is money, right? Everyone in this chat knows that I talk about money a lot. I know that every single person that I've ever spoke to in business undercharges what they're actually worth. And I feel this, there's not one person I speak to has said to me, Connor, I'm charging too much, because we know that we're undercharging, and we know and we continuously know that we're undercharging, and we do so for the long time. There's no excuse for us fixing that. And we have to look at money for the business as a priority. But what happens then if we ignore our pricing, right? It's stuck at the same revenue. We keep attracting the same clients, the same level of clients. We're working harder for less because margins are compressed. We are resenting our clients because they undervalue the service, and they're just the wrong fit clients. And we might have good revenue, but there's no profit, and we can't invest in our business. Again, this probably sounds familiar to a lot of people because it's common across many businesses. And this is actually my point. I was telling you that I'm all increasing my prices for 2026. Jokes don't really work on over things, do they? Gareth, thanks for laughing. I'm just telling everybody what now. But the bottom line is, right, that we have to build a plan to increase our prices. Whether or not we do that incrementally, which I love doing because it just gives us that confidence as we grow, or if it's only for new clients to come on at this next year, that's completely fine as well. And again, right, what happens if we sort our pricing? Who would be happier if they made more money? Who would be happier if they had more time because of that? There's not one person I know who would say that they wouldn't be. Because while money isn't the be all and end all, it certainly alleviates a lot of problems. And if we had better margins, we could invest in ourselves and in our business. We could start to premium our position, or position ourselves premiumly, and give clients the value, especially when we're charging greater sums for the service that we offer. And we can be selective with the type of clients that we want to work with. If we could work for twice as much money and work half the amount of time, it would be a much better position. And ultimately, it's profit, because that is what focuses our attentions right across everything. We are doing this to make money. We're doing this to build a business, and we're doing this to fund the life that we want. These are the Q4 actions in the non-negotiables for number 3. So it's audit your current pricing, right? Where are you right this second? What are you charging per hour? Can you charge more? Calculate what you should actually charge. Well, how do we do that? We look at our projects, we see where the costs are, we understand if that has cost us more. If I had a staff member who was costing me 50 quid an hour, and I was charging them out of 45 pound an hour, there's a problem there. We need to ensure that we know the true cost of every hour that we bill, and also the true cost of the business for every hour, especially in service businesses. And we have to do an audit of our clients from top to bottom and identify those unprofitable clients, or those least profitable clients. And by the end of this month, and I've already written a few emails for my clients this month already about price increases for 2026. Many of the agency owners that you will know, many of the agency owners that I work with, haven't increased prices significantly in the last number of years. And so, with cost of living, cost of inflation's increasing, and all those things, you're actually working harder for less money. So we need to make a plan to increase our prices. And then we need to draft that communication to clients, and then figure out all of the objections that we're going to have when a client says you're too expensive right this second. Well, we need to understand that and justify that and have that planned before we even send this out to the clients, so that we can address that in the content, but also address that when they raise their hand up and say so. And then we're going to communicate that all to the clients, put the new pricing live for all new inquiries or all clients, depending on what you've chosen as your method of increase. And then we're going to start selling at that new price and get the confidence to sell more like that. My question in all of this is, which one of those is your non-negotiable? Well, that's a rhetorical question right now, but you can answer it if you wish. Because The point in this is to understand what we need to do. Is it pipeline? Do we need to set our pipeline and focus on that to ensure consistent growth? Do we need systems for every process in our business and documented and refined and instilled across the entire team? Is it pricing to start charging what we're actually worth? And or is it something else entirely? Because if it's something else entirely, that's perfect. At least you've identified that. If it's one of those three, which are the three most common that I see, that's equally fine. Because the point of determining which one is your non-negotiable is that is where we're going to focus all of our efforts on between now and Christmas as the nucleus of what we have to do, because it's ultimately the system or the process or the pricing that is holding you back. And I know that nobody has infinite time, that it's our most finite resource. So we need to put our effort where it's going to make the biggest difference between now. And then what we do again is revisit this in January and look at where it sits in that hierarchy once again. I'll send you all this afterwards, which is just the little the action plan for each of those non-negotiables. So just to give an idea, week 1 and 2 are going to be exactly the same for everything. It's complete that whole diagnostic of where you are and where you want to be, what your priorities are, and then start your priority task from the framework and start to document that. But from my perspective, I've given a list of little elements you can start to build out as tasks for week 3 and 4 all the way through to December. Now, these are my tasks that I would focus on, but they shouldn't be, seen as the most endless list. You need to build this out further for your systems, your processes, to ensure that you're hitting your goals. And certainly, if you're currently a client of mine, we'll be working through all of these over the next number of weeks. In each of these sections and each of these tasks, build them out further, document all of the processes that you need to do, and start building those out and start loading them into your project management system or track them in Google Sheets. It doesn't matter which, as long as they're visible and there's something that you're monitoring between now and the new year. That's pretty much the gist of this planning session, because if you leave tonight and do nothing, January will look exactly like every other year. You'll be discounting prices because you're desperate, you're working harder for the same money, and you'll promise that next year will be the year, but don't be that person. And the difference is between agency owners who break through and the ones that actually stay stuck isn't because it's talent, it's not luck, it's action. And we've got about 79 days between now and Christmas to achieve a lot of the stuff that we want to achieve. And while we're very busy in service delivery, it would be remiss of me to say not to focus on these actions as well. Has anyone any questions?
I had a bit of a thought, Connor.
Go ahead, Gareth.
You're talking about the priority of the three, which of the three systems, pipeline or pricing?
Yes.
And I was having a wee bit of a thought that if everyone can get their pricing right, you can feed backwards towards the other ones potentially, because you'll know the level of client that'll feed in your pipeline, and then possibly build the systems to cater for that type of client. So it's a wee bit of inside out thinking rather than the conventional.
No, you're absolutely right, and you could justify it exactly the same for the other two as well.
Yeah.
If you just had a bigger pipeline, well, then you could charge more and you'd still win some of the business. So there's a complete another. It depends. Like personally, for you, it's where do your strengths lie in this next 79 days? Where are you going to be able to make the biggest impact? And as you said, that could be just increase your pricing, charge more, and then put money towards the other two when the time's right and build the systems out. So like I would be looking at that going, yep, well, have a look at your pricing structure for 2025. Does that need to change for your existing clients? Or should that change for existing clients? Like I'm always very respectful of people who paid you money all this year. You don't want to upset that apple cart. But by the same respect, do you want to work for less next year with those same clients?
What's your thoughts? I've spent the past maybe 5 or 6 months working very hard to try and build up more retainer type clients, with the view of trying to cover sort of operational costs before having to win new business. So once you secure a retainer type client, they're obviously coming in on a sort of a fixed monthly cost. What's your thoughts on adjusting that cost during the course if it's a rolling retainer, let's say.
Yeah. Okay, easy. So in your scope of work, in your retainer document, there needs to be a cost of living increase every January.
Okay, so you're at
Yeah.
least covered annually on it.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would build that in before you even start so that it's upfront, transparent, and that the customer knows why. Well, why is there a price increase every year? It's because our staff increases every year. And it's just covering that. It's a nominal charge. Like I've seen very recently, one agency, not here, not a client, have a 15% annual increase in their cost of service for exactly the same service. And they are putting that into motion, let's say every single year. That, and this isn't somebody who's just started this. This is actually, they do this with every client, and it's in their contract. It's upfront, and while it stings every year, it's black and white.
Wow.
Yeah, 15%. Like my job in that conversation, by the way, was to negotiate it back down. Uh,
Sustainable.
yeah, like your price of your client or your service there doubles every 7 years, which is completely unsupportable. Like you couldn't figure that out. Whereas I think that a nominal 5% increase every single year is something that most businesses should be able to understand very easily and to address. So, like going forward, I would have that in your retainer contract, that is something that, you know, our price increases every January, and that's to cover cost of living, cost of increases, and that just means that there's no surprises midway through our contract. We don't have to have an awkward conversation.
No, that's good feedback. Thank you.
Pleasure. But yeah, like, so what I would do then is I would also have a look at your current customers and see which ones that you can look at the pricing on, or, you know, where we can look at the service and just show a cost rather than hourly rate and things like that. I know you're good at that anyway, but just definitely across the board, I would be looking to increase our prices in 2026.
Great.
Pleasure. Well, that went very quick, to be honest. I didn't know what was going to happen there. Gareth, have you got a ticket for January? You have, both of you?
Yes, yes, I got a ticket. I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. No, I'm looking forward to that as well. There's a good number coming to that one, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's plenty of tickets sold. No, that's fantastic. Like Tony and Andrew, I don't know if you have any questions. If you do, please fire ahead, and if you don't, you're absolutely fine to not have any as well. But anything else we help, Gareth?
Implementing structure systems.
Oh yeah.
There's a good one. So systems I find systems reasonably easy to document.
Yep.
Sort of implementing them throughout the team then. What would be your thoughts on that as a method? Is it
make it their problem. No, genuinely, that's not, don't make, because I know, like, as MD and founder, similar scenario to yourself, I find that I'm good at creating them but not following them myself.
Yeah.
And so what we had to do was to remove ourselves from that process and give that to somebody in the team to manage. So, for example, if it was communication protocols from the studio, well, then that was the creative director's role. If it was sales training and all the rest, that was the sales, the client services manager's role, and they just implemented those procedures and processes, and they monitored them, and then they kicked back the information up the channels.
Okay, so write yourself out of the process.
100%, because we're going to break it every single time. We're going to choose to ignore it, and nobody's going to tell us off for doing so. So why be part of that process whenever we are paying the team to do that? Like that was something that we did, and because Marty and I, you know, was obviously chancing our arm half the time, but we didn't follow our process, so we expected our team to follow, because, well, nobody was going to tell us off. But the truth is that if the team do what you say they're going to do, then that's best practice. And if they don't follow that, it's a performance issue.
That's fair play, yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And I know that's harder to implement than for me to say it like that, but certainly, like, there's certain things in the studio that the CD could be focused on, that it should be their response. If they were in any other studio, that would be their responsibility. And we need to make sure that they are doing those tasks, because it's ultimately for the best practice of the studio.
Okay. So at the end of, as part of every system, build a reporting procedure, and at the end that doesn't involve the owner.
Yeah. Like, so if it's for example, if it's a reporting, or if they need to have authority to do something, give them a decision matrix where they can make their own decisions up to a certain value. or a certain level before they have to kick it up to you. And then anything else you just need to know that it's being reported on every, whether it's a weekly, a monthly, or a quarterly report, that you can then bring that and go, okay, right, that's working to our standard. I would probably have a look at things a lot quicker earlier on, just to make sure that everything is running to plan. But then you start to release the reins a little bit and give them some legroom to, to figure it out themselves.
Yeah, no, it's a journey we've been on in the studio, trying to free me fully from that
Yeah.
creative oversight, I suppose. It's hard to tear yourself away from having a big interest in it, but
yeah. Well, that goes back to that comment I made earlier on. It's like we are choosing to be the employee rather than the MD.
Yeah.
And that's a big one. Like that's common across the majority of businesses that I speak to, where it's a creative or a technical lead who's the founder and also still running the business, because that's the part of the job that you really liked, why you started the business in the first place.
Yeah.
And it is a choice to stay in that role. And again, that's why we had the advantage. Well, I had the advantage is that I wasn't in that role ever, so I didn't know that was a nice role to be in, because it was just a job. It was just a job for somebody, but it wasn't my job ever.
You had the nice side of it.
Well, I don't know about that.
So no, that's super.
Cool.
Pipelines, suppose, all equally important then again. So it's going through that review of dream clients and ideal clients and dormant clients or dormant leads. I suppose that's the main task then for the next 90 or 79 days.
Honestly, like, finish this year as strong as you can, but also have one eye on what has to happen for January rather than slowing down. This would have been the period where we'd have ramped up all our activity, the conversations that we were having, the focus on new business acquisition. And even though that might not kick into January or February or March next year, that's where we were able to, this work that we did now, this foundation work, was what got us ahead for that. It's like, I'm doing a high rock next year, but I'm doing all the running this year to make sure that I can actually do the running next year.
Yeah, excellent. Been watching your progress. Was it 10K this morning, or was that yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah.
10K. Well, it was just last week was the first one, but it's all fun, all good. But look, we'll leave it there for now. And if any of you do want to send me a message afterwards, please feel free to do so. And I'll get back to you. Gareth, as always, just drop me a message and I'll get straight back to you.